Relevant with Tactics podcast. Maybe in the future there is gonna be some substantial changes in what I am doing here. The problem, I don't want to say it is a problem, but the thing is that I enjoy and really like the whole self improving thing and theme. I believe that it is also and still was, it was and still is quite crucial for myself and for what I'm doing and for the quote unquote success that I might be seeing or have seen up to this point. So I think that it is really worthwhile. On the other hand, of course, certain interests and priorities in life do change, meaning I'm studying architecture, so it really would make sense to do something in that realm, obviously. But uh, always doing the same thing, always being in this probably creative space might also not be the best thing you can do. It might also actually be wrong, and having this realm of maybe just bit more science, depends on of course what we are talking about, is also very smart to have. And I'm sharing these thoughts because I think that it might be useful for some that might be having kind of a similar problem. I do indeed always suggest and think that it is smart to do things simultaneously, if that makes sense, in terms of, okay, I am studying architecture, so it really does make sense to do something related to that so that I can get even better at what I'm doing anyways. So and also the whole Instagram thing, posting every day some 3D model, something rendered, something that is or has something to do with architecture, really also does make sense because of that. I'm creating this or I'm developing this skill or these skills that could really help me, besides the fact that it's just interesting to me and it's interesting for me, as well as it's the whole self-improvement thing is interesting to me, which might be the problem there. Might just get a bit more scientific, and also English is not my mother tongue. It's I'm actually at this point, looking back, I'm so incredibly happy that I've started the podcast, because I think my English would not be as good as it is right now. Whether it is about pronunciation or whether it is about using it and being able to use it, which is very good in various ways, and also in uni. Didn't, by the way, think that I would have so many subjects and so many things in English. But yeah, I think and believe that we're gonna do something self-improvement related, but a bit more scientific. So let's actually see if the neural network newsletter has something new for us. What the fuck? Foundational fitness protocol. This is nothing of interest to me. Why do I enjoy it that much? I think that really knowing that it is a fact and that it has been studied, and getting this presented by someone that really knows his or her stuff is also very nice to see and very nice to have. So let's see if Tim Ferriss probably has not posted anything up to this point. Sam Harris, also interesting personality. I don't know if he's having a blog. I mean, blogs are also quite good, quite nice. Besides books, but yeah, books are books, blogs are blogs. Period. Debates, essays, interviews, essays. Meets the renegades of the intellectual dark web. It's a Westworld. What is wrong with cruelty to robots? A few thoughts on the Muslim ban. Speaking of truth with Jordan Peterson. This might be interesting for whatever reason. I don't know. It's a post by uh, Harris from January 23rd of 2017. It is it has some age, you know. It's not the newest one. There we go. I recently interviewed the psychologist Jordan B. Peterson on the Waking Up podcast. As I said at the beginning of our conversation, I'd received more listener requests for him than for Neil deGrasse Tyson, Richard Dawkins, Steven Pinker, Edward Snowden, or indeed any other person on Earth. The resulting exchange, however, was not what our mutual fans were hoping for. Rather than discuss religion and atheism or the relationship between science and ethics, we spent 2 hours debating what it means to say that a proposition is or seems to be true. This is not a trivial problem in philosophy, but the place at which Peterson and I got stuck was a strange one. He seemed to be claiming that one belief system compatible with our survival must be true, and any that gets us killed must be false. As I tried to show, this view makes no sense, and I couldn't quite convince myself that Peterson actually held it. The response on social media suggests that most listeners found our exchange as perplexing and frustrating as I did. The main criticism directed at me has been that once we hit this impasse, I wasn't a gracious enough host to let the dialogue proceed to other topics. I understand this complaint and even anticipated it during the dialogue itself, but I feared that if we moved on to discuss the validity of religious faith, the power of myth, the reality of Jungian archetypes, or any of the more ethereal topics for which Peterson has become a celebrated exponent, without first agreeing on how sane and reasonable people can differentiate fact from fantasy, we were doomed to talk past each other with every sentence, which I do really understand, but without myself ever heard whatever this podcast episode, it could really be interesting. Don't get me wrong if this is something, and I think it is an interesting topic in general. What I might have seen or might have other people heard say is Peterson using, maybe using very intellectual language, very, I don't know, very, words that, nobody really is using, at least not in common language, like just, in everyday, talking, which I do understand people not liking, because, especially people with their mother tongue not being English might be really difficult, or even more difficult for them, exponentially more difficult for them to grasp what the conversation is about, and it might diminish the amount of people that can actually get something useful out of this podcast episode. But I mean, besides that, and it's indeed something I thought about for quite a few times. When it is about something scientific, or when it is about something science related, it really does make sense to use those words that have been created to describe whatever he or she or whomever is talking about. So but even still, this is something I really do enjoy about Andrew Huberman. He is using language that is understandable by almost everyone, I'd say, and this is very useful, of course, unless there is no, when I'm talking about the amygdala, I might not be using any other word because it is the amygdala. There might be some other scientific ways to describe the amygdala, or certain other words, maybe in Latin and whatever, but yeah, still. So my point is, I do understand people being like, I would have liked to hear something else, because, I've been waiting for this podcast for such a long time, and I've, not been able to get anything out of it, but yeah, still. The response on social media suggests that most listeners found our exchange as perplexing and frustrating as I did. Peterson and I ended the podcast on a civil note, and I promised to have him back if our listeners wanted us to attempt to address other topics. He has since tried to clarify his position in a series of emails, one of which he has read publicly. So here is part of the text as emailed to me, in which he speaks about the necessity of finding a basis for ethics, i.e. answering the question, how should we act in the world within a Darwinian framework? So here is an answer. Individually such that the family thrives, and this probably is from this email, at the family level, so that society thrives at the societal level, so that the ecosystem thrives today, tomorrow, next week, next year, and across time. That is the ultimate, what the fuck, Piagetan, Piagetian, equilibrated state, and, or is it Piaget? I don't know. By the way, although few know this, was trying to solve the problem of the relationship between science and ethics. That's what drove him his entire life. The individual who acts in this manner is the mythological hero who confronts the unknown with attention and intent to communicate, who obtains the gold from the eternal dragon of chaos, an evolved representation of the predatory promising domain beyond the safety of the campfire, and who distributes that gold to the community. He rescues the youthful virgin from the predatory reptile. That's Saint George. It's the oldest story we know of. It is the Enuma Elish, the Mesopotamian creation myth upon which the opening lines of Genesis are historically predicted. Can't you see the evolutionary relationship? That is the archetypal hero that is first a way of behaving, second a representation of acting, third a way of organizing society around that action and representation, fourth a society that then selects through masculine competition for the best co-tender to that representation, fifth what is selected for by women who peel off the top of the masculine competition. They outsource the impossible cognitive task of mate selection to the male dominance hierarchy. They outsource the impossible cognitive task of mate selection to the male dominance hierarchy. Which, I mean, if I'm reading this, yeah, anyway. A hero emerges at the top of the competition. He gets all the girls. Human females are Mother Nature. The selection apparatus they choose matters that female chimps are not. The archetypal hero is a super meme. It's been around so long that we have adapted biologically to its existence, just as we have adapted in every way to the 300 million year old dominance hierarchy, which is more permanent, more real, even from a strictly realist perspective, than such evanescent phenomena as amphibians, reptiles, and mammals. Older even than trees, the closer you are to the archetypal hero, the more likely you are, at least as a male, to win the dominance hierarchy contest that makes you attractive to women. If Dawkins was wiser, he would have been Carl Jung. An archetype is the ultimate meme. Or actually Carl Jung, I think he was German. I think if I'm ever gonna finish this one, I'm gonna finish it another time. Of course, I don't understand the whole text there. I see certain things that I could just be looking up and probably then grasp what he's talking about there. But one, at least myself, some people might be really knowledgeable in these spaces and whatever. But you can still really see certain values that Jordan is or Mr. Peterson is holding. For example, religion being something rather important, religion being something quite crucial, and also this very well, I don't know how to say it in a very objective sense. To clearly see male and female, let's say, boundaries and roles and whatever. Definitely also something to see there. I do still want to point out, I think to some degree it is useful to know thoughts of people that are very left-winged and thoughts of people that are very right-winged and things, or thoughts of people that are somewhere in the middle. But yeah, period. I think it can be useful. It can be useful to to just maybe even trying to understand the other extremum or the other extreme. But yeah, I really hope that you've been able to get something out of this text. out of this thing, and I'm hopefully gonna see you the next time. So